value does more bodies bring to a guy?
Does it have to bring value?
Yeah, no, I'm saying,
But that's
I'm
what
saying,
I'm saying.
I'm saying when a girl, men are biologically predispositioned to be attracted to purity and youth.
What do you mean by that?
Like throughout all of history, like the most powerful men had concubines of virgins.
Right.
But
like so that's what I'm saying. You can't. I'm saying you can't. I'm saying you can't.
Such as Genghis Khan.
Yeah, but I would attribute that to the claiming of power. They want to claim power over submissive female. And
wait, guys, it needs to be one at a time.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say that would be attributed to men wanting, or people in those positions wanting, claiming as much power as possible. And the most power you can have is over a submissive, pure female, right? It doesn't necessarily.
Right, but I'm saying like they're attracted to youth and purity, and they can't undo that.
But that's a power-based mindset, right? And that power is what we kind of crave through a survival mindset, right? When we're trying, the person who has the most power is the most likely to survive, right? And so when we're in that frame of mind, that makes sense. But that's not the world that we kind of really live in anymore. It's not really based around survival. It's not based around this calling for power. I don't think that should be the defining kind of factor in terms of
right, but that's like a woman's point of view.
Right.
You might not think that, but in general, guys care, and so it's like you can't go to the market and tell them. And I know your friend doesn't, and but this is an exception.
But
it's
I
not
don't
the
think
rule.
he's that much of an exception. I've met a lot of people who don't really care and don't really consider that because there are other factors they consider.
Are they trying to sleep with you?
Who?
Like the people that told you that?
In terms of they don't care?
Probably. Because guys are here, right? So guys, you prefer a purer woman than more of a hoe?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and there's a lot of factors when it comes to liking a girl, but I think if the exact same girl and then she slept with 1,000 men or 3 men, it's like I don't judge the girl that slept with 1,000 men. Live your life, but yeah, you're gonna want the girl who has had less men inside of her.
Right.
Even if I were to say that there was any weight on body count, I would say you'd have to consider the circumstances that body count happened in, right? Where that person was at, why they were sleeping around, right? And what space they might be in, right? Someone can completely change their habits. But
guys actually
I don't think
care.
that's true. I don't believe that's true. I think that is actually kind of making too much of a generalization. I know you work on the rule and not the exception, but that is too much. It's a lot more nuanced than that. I don't think as many men as you think actually.
So I'm just saying, if a woman came to me and said, "I've slept with 1,000 men because I was broken and I had been abused and blah blah blah," right? You still slept with 1,000 men.
Where's the compassion in that, though? Where's
I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking about you've had 1,000 penises inside your vagina.
If you are going to be with someone, shouldn't compassion be a main factor in that relationship, right? An understanding of who they are, of what they've been through. Shouldn't that be a main factor?
The world doesn't owe you understanding. Like that's entitlement. You're not entitled to someone's compassion and understanding. And I think men are allowed to be selective in who they date. And like I think men are allowed to have standards, and if that's their standard, so be it. And it's not every single guy, but I think in general, if you poll men, would you rather have a girl that slept with 100 or slept with 1? They would pick 1. And are they less picky than they were 100 years ago? Sure, you were a hoe if you slept with 3 people 100 years ago, right? So are they less picky now? Sure, but you can't undo the wiring. What in general men want.
So where would you say that's come from in terms of them wanting that? Where would you say?
It's biological.
Because
that had to biology develops, right? I'll tell you. So where is that developed?
So historically, they had to ensure paternity.
Yeah.
So historically, like a men did not want to pass on resources to a kid that was not theirs. So they're biologically predispositioned to be grossed out by hoes, basically.
Yeah, because it's like, well, whose child is that? It's not mine. It could be Stanley's and Derek's. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't know. And so you're trying to, I hear what you're saying, but you can't undo the biological wiring that human beings have had for centuries, thousands of years. It just is what it is.
Can we put a marker on where this historic number is coming from? You're saying 100 years ago. That was 1922. So
okay.
What? So like
maybe
so
direct.
Yeah,
even 1922.
So between
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry, between World War I and World War II, and in what part of it's a very vague argument. You're saying you're saying historically 100 years ago.
Well, you could take data from like the 1950s where the majority of high school graduates were actually virgins before like the whole birth control was introduced and the sexual revolution like happened in the U.S.
Because most birth control wasn't actually invented by then.
You're right. Like I'm not saying like women it gave women the option to sleep around. But that's what I'm saying. Back then, it was like it was bad. Like it was looked down upon if you had more than a certain amount of sex partners. And you can even think of this anecdotally. Like if I start telling my mom if I start telling my mom about the body counts like of girls nowadays, she's disgusted. She's like, what on earth is going on? I tell my grandma, cool. I tell my grandma, but what that's totally not anything. That's like irrelevant to the conversation. Really, I tell my grandma about like the body counts nowadays. She's like, what is going on in these streets? And we could just say like anecdotally, and me, when I hear like my little sister with the stories that they tell me, I'm like, what on earth? But it's like every generation. Go ahead.
In America right now, 100% of women that enter the college system around 17, right? Only 12.3% leave virgins. Only 12.3% leave college virgins.
Wait, you give me an 100%.
You got 100% of women entering the college education system, and when you leave the college education system, only 12.3% are virgins.
What's that statistic for men?
For women.
So what's that statistic for men though?
4.5.
4.5 men leave virgins,
yeah.
and 14.5%
12.5%. 12.3%.
So we're talking a difference of like 1.5%, 2%.
So what happens during the college years now, in these days and times, is people are definitely more promiscuous.
In the most formative years of their life, when they're supposed to be going out and experiencing new experiences.
So then we have this whole.
It's a misnomer, though. Like it's a complete misnomer.
So do you think society benefits from promiscuity, or it doesn't benefit from promiscuity?
I think it's completely irrelevant.
You think promiscuity is completely irrelevant?
Yes. I think whether it benefits society or not is irrelevant. I don't think that it should be definitive enough as like one person, 100 people, 1,000 people, it is a benefit or not to society.
You can't prescribe statistics to that. It's just like you can't be going 12.4% of this because it's relevant, subjective to each individual, and they're in a bodily autonomy.
Okay, but do you think it's good for families that people are sleeping around more?
In what sense?
Like, do you think it's good to go into a marriage with a bunch of exes? Is that good? Like, and I just say this from experience because my parents have only been with each other, and like where I would see, exes come back in the picture, and like some of my friends' parents' marriages and like other stuff come in where my parents had like only been with each other, and I think it was better for their marriage.
And that's a completely subjective view. It's complete. Like it's.
Well, you could say that, but when you also have data to back it up,
right?
I would say there's other factors that go into that, and I kind of bring back what I said about kind of having a certain amount of self-awareness, right? When you choose to go into marriage, I think people have to take accountability for their pasts and acknowledge, where they may be still holding on to things before you enter into a big commitment like that. And I don't think, the number of your body count or the number of people you've been with prevents you from being able to do that. I feel like you can still make the choice to do that. You have to make the choice to do that. But I think it's independent of your body count. And I think even if you slept with a number of people, if you have the self-awareness to be able to say, this is what I'm still holding on to. These are the people I'm still holding on to. This is why it didn't work out. I'm choosing to move forward with that. That's a choice. And you can actively make that choice consciously, right?
You're right. And that's why it's not 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like every person you sleep with brings more baggage to the next relationship.
You can learn to release that baggage. You know what I mean? And if you make that conscious choice.
You can, but I don't think most women do.
Yeah, but then I think the conversation should be about how do we, when you say that people don't owe you understanding and compassion, I would actually disagree with that, because I would say at a base, as humans, we owe each other understanding, we owe each other empathy, we owe each other acceptance, so that we can actually work towards a middle ground on these issues and find a way through instead of kind of just placing the blame and